So I want to move us into our final pillar, which is respond. And we've talked a little bit about how this pillar really focuses on responding quickly to HIV outbreaks so that we can make sure that we're bringing care to the people who need it most and doing it efficiently so they can be virally suppressed. Obviously, that creates treatment as prevention efforts as well. So some of the activities that are planned for here in Orange County are to increase linkage support through our early intervention services program. That will also include hospital linkage coordinators. It'll also include linkage support in the Orange County jail system. Another activity that's planned for Orange County is to utilize early intervention services to identify those out-of-care individuals and help bring them back into care. Can our funders talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think this is the time for us to get creative, and implement different strategies that would really engage the community that is out of care. Those folks that know their status, but for some reason or another have decided not to stay in care, whether it was because of stigma or they had a bad experience with one provider, or they simply don't think it's a need right now because they may not have any symptoms. So I think we as a community have to really find ways to find them and engage them into care. So we're using this funding that we receive for ending the HIV grant to improve our linkage to care process, to streamline the process, to use the information that is available for clients that are out of care and bring them into care and provide them the services that they need. And sometimes they don't even know they need, and sometimes they don't even know exist. And they think it may cost money, or they don't have the ability to get to an appointment. So we want to increase the education in the community and let them know that we have free services. The only thing that you need to access case management, medical care, medication, housing is proof of HIV status. So it's important for folks to know that there is usually no cost associated with the services that we have available. Our goal here is to get clients into medication, get them to see a medical provider to not only address their HIV medication or their HIV diagnosis, but everything else that is associated with that and how that affects their day-to-day life. So we are working with the state in order to improve that linkage process and increasing access of early intervention specialists. So folks that are really out in the streets, out there, using all the resources they have available to find clients and bring them back.
I would also add on to that piece, in addition to our EIS, or early intervention services, we're also utilizing grassroots organizations. We're funding to provide that access to our priority populations, to those individuals that may not know that they are at risk for HIV, and addressing those issues as such. So Black women, our Latinx population, our same gender loving, our transgender individuals, making sure that we're providing access to those grassroots organizations that already specialize in providing care, treatment, HIV testing, and funding those individuals to give us more so to say a bang for our buck, because the health department, I'm going to be very honest, we may not have the best reputation in going into some of these communities, but if we are collaborating with those grassroots organizations that already do it, they can say, oh, well, look, the health department is working with someone else. Hey, let's give them a try as well, because it got to be a collaborative partnership. It cannot just be one organization. It cannot just be government entities. It can't just be the high-level individuals. It has to be a community-wide approach. So I think that's the best way that we can respond to this as quickly as possible, and reaching out to those potential outbreaks is collaboration and partnership.
Thank you. And working with those community partners that have that community presence really helps to support the linkage in hospitals, in the jail program, right?
Exactly.
Great, thank you. So how do we make sure that individual interventions like partner services or other linkage to care efforts are sensitive, are non-coercive, and are culturally appropriate?
I would say it is the way we address with the person that we are dealing with. If I notice Andres is Hispanic, there's a better way to say, hey, hola Andre, ¿cómo estás? Ven acá. It's easier to make Andres more comfortable instead of focusing English in knowing of the same language, talking the same language, make him way more comfortable. It's like, hey, that's one of his own. That's his body. So that's bring him right away. And then with that approach, we get the conversation going. And then you will see everything, the flow will go so smoothly. Everything will work out. But knowing the best way to approach an individual is a good thing. It's a plus.
Mm-hmm.
Also, sorry not to cut you. As agencies, we also have to know our limitations as well. So if we aren't providing a certain service to a group that we have right there in front of us, hey, I have XYZ down the street that can provide, they can come over here and meet you and have that conversation with you. We have to understand that this is not the agency. We are supposed to be providing access to the person. So if the best agency is not you, be willing to say that and get the right one there to help and provide the assistance and care that that person needs. It's no like personal feelings towards this, because if you're actually trying to end an epidemic, it's not about me. It's about the person. So if it's best for that person, then hey, can you come and do da 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 da? And then she comes on and do what we need to do to get that person into care. And look, hey girl, look what we were able to do. It's a collaborative partnership. It's not to say, okay, my XYZ agency is the one that's going to do everything. No, it has to be a real collaborative partnership if we're going to really respond to those communities that need the access.
This is the time to end the HIV epidemic.
Yes.
And we all have to really come together and do our part. Like I think we've talked about this, through our discussion today, that we all play a role, whether you're a client, whether you're a worker in the medical field, or you are just from any other organization not related to HIV at all. We all play a role, and this is our time to end the HIV epidemic.
And to add to what Kara says, we're not focusing on numbers. It's a collaborative effort. Like if I'm dealing with a transgender, if I feel like the transgender may fit better at a different organization, it will be better for me to say, you know what, is that okay? If you feel comfortable, can I refer you to another organization that you will find some peers that can really understanding your needs, that can better serve you than myself. That in the same way, if somebody, when a queer patient come here to my office, they know that, hey, we will do everything in Creole. There will not be any language barrier. So that can help. Instead of, if you have a Creole patient, you don't speak Creole, refer them to us. It's a partnership. Yeah, it's not about like, hey, I have 100 clients. No, we are not focusing on numbers. We are focusing on the quality of care. And that's what's going to make people stay in care. Because when the client meets somebody that speaks their language, and people who are willing to help them too. So there's the attitude about that, because we are here to help. That's my approach. I'm here to help. So how can I help you? So with that, they usually will open up. They say, okay, let's see what we can help. Let's see what we can help you get done today. This is the approach that we think that's gonna help us ending the HIV epidemic.
And something that really strikes me about that, the partnership and the having enough awareness of my agency to know I might not be the one that's able to provide XYZ. I think as a system, right, as an HIV system of care, we also have to look back and have enough awareness to be I might not be the solution to ending HIV, right? Because my job is to provide treatment. So it's having enough awareness to be able to look around and be okay, so who else do we need to get involved? And I'm grateful that we have this right now, because it's you have community advocates and organizations, and then you have 3 of the most powerful women in HIV in Orlando, sitting right there across the table, right? Because you represent the system of care. So the fact that you give access to community organizations and advocates, that's huge. And I have to say, I love what I learned while I was working, with you. But part of the reason why I was grateful to move on to Maven, who has our mission is not HIV. But our mission is capacity building. And then I get to go, and as a person living with HIV, make it so that everything we do has a meaningful impact on people living with HIV. Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes that's the power that we can have, is there's people that are not going to be around this table that are going to bring so much more the moment we start to identify it. And I'm grateful for the fact that we all get to sit and have this conversation.
Well, HIV is a health equity issue. And that's something that we have to understand. It's so rooted in some of the historical reasons that we're still fighting for the end of discrimination of all types, right? And first of all, understanding that you know that you need to build an ecosystem. And I like the term ecosystem versus system. It's because an ecosystem speaks to that each piece has its own place, and it's part of something bigger than itself, right? And it sustains one another. So it's life-giving, right? An ecosystem gives life. So when we think of ourselves as part of an ecosystem, when we see something missing, we don't necessarily become defensive, right? We just look for whoever can serve that purpose. When we can do something, we know to call our friend, right? Because they are part of the other part of the ecosystem. And we're sustaining each other and sustaining this mission of ending the epidemic, but not ending the epidemic 100 years from today, right? We have all the tools to do it today. So, but that is a bigger part of it, right? And finally, right, really thinking critically about the role that each agency can play in changing the mentality in which we're all operating under will create the kind of change that we're talking about.
So if I may put kind of a fine point on the conversation that we've kind of all had, because we've kind of all said it, but in different ways. It's no longer just like culturally appropriate, but it's actual cultural humility. And I know that we don't necessarily think of that as a patient or necessarily as a provider, but it is a conversation and language that is starting to be used more and more. And the point is this, is that I might not be the best person to, it illustrates a greater sense of self-awareness within the ecosystem. And I do love that language, because ultimately what I'm here for is to provide the best care to you, not have a patient caseload or anything like that. And over the years, I have certainly seen this area transform into an area that is much more culturally humble in that sense. Like, maybe I might not be, I'm located on this side of town, but actually there's an organization that's like a block away from you. Well, have you thought about that? And they're like, okay, that might be the best fit. Because ultimately, if I want someone to stay in care and to get the best care possible, what I'm trying to do is really listen to them and understand what their needs are. And if you're an organization or an individual that has no idea what cultural humility is or how to talk about it, again, reach out on Talk Test Street or the Central Florida HIV Planning Council or to Maven, so that an individual can come and talk about how cultural humility can literally transform your organization or business, or if you're a patient and you're not exactly sure, again, you could talk to somebody, get better educated so that you get the best care possible. But ultimately, it's always about asking, kind of like on an individual level, what is the best thing for the patient? And I've actually done this, like with my patients, and inevitably every person that I would, say, hey, this might be the best option for you. Have you thought about this? And they're like, yes. And 3 or 4 phone calls later, because ultimately if a person is happy, whether on this end of town or that end of town or in different counties, as an organization, you're going to get tenfold the calls. I mean, that's just the way, cultural humility has acted in my life. And it's really cool to kind of see how it's starting to play out over and over again, because people's needs are actually being addressed and they're getting the care that they need. We still have more work to do. And I think that that's the great thing about having everybody at the table today, to kind of put fine points on things like, this is where we are, where we've been, and this is how we can go to the next level.
Thank you. I want to move into our final question. We've alluded a little bit to some of the ethical issues that need to be considered when we're talking about implementing early intervention specialists and other linkage support teams to help identify those folks who are out of care and bring them back in. I want to also ask, how do we make sure that we're promoting community engagement and getting that input from the community about some of the tools that do help us respond quickly to folks who are out of care and get them linked back into care?
I think that circles back around to that peer engagement, because that person is the bridge between the clients who are actually being served and the providers who are providing care or services. So we can be providing services and say that these services are great and they're, servicing this community in XYZ amount in fashion, but are they really being effective? Are the people actually engaging with those? Are they satisfied with those services? And that's information that you can really get from having that peer support, that open and honest dialogue between the client and that peer to get that feedback to the providers about their services and the things that they are offering to the community. A lot of times we go on reports, but once again, it's more about evidence-based and the people who are actually consuming those things, and is that actually working for them in their lives?
I think it's important to understand that this linkage to care programs that we're implementing are confidential. I mean, it's very important to maintain the privacy of the client, and all of the efforts that we have put into place and we continue to implement really put that in the front center of our mission to make sure that the confidentiality of the client is kept and the client understands that our mission is to link them to care. There's nothing else behind it. We really want to focus on that we want to get them into care and provide the resources that they need. There is nothing to penalize them for their status. This is really a community that wants to engage them into care, and all of these services are confidential and, like I said before, free in many of the cases. So, those that are watching this panel speak today, it's important for you to take note of that and help us spread the word that resources are available. We want clients to connect to care, to stay in care, and help us prevent future transmissions, because we need everybody's effort in sharing the message, putting it out there that HIV is a chronic disease that we can help end.
We began talking a little bit about the equity component or the lack of equity and what we're striving to change, right? But knowing and understanding that, racism exists and xenophobia exists and transphobia exists, homophobia exists. These are real things, and they're impacting people every time they turn on the TV, every time they hear some demagogue, right, talking, or whatever it may be the case, that it's causing them to feel afraid. And those are legitimate reasons to be afraid. And we got to understand that to begin with, right? When an immigrant is afraid of getting deported and having their family separated forever, that is a legitimate fear. When a Black person who has been stopped time and time again, illegitimately for being Black, right? And they're afraid of the police, that is a legitimate fear. That is a legitimate fear. And there are laws that still criminalize people living with HIV in the state of Florida. So all of these things are at play at the same time. And figuring out how do we speak to these fears are most likely the ways to actually address the questions that people are asking themselves right now. Because I'll tell you this much. I am a person who I think is more informed than most. And I get a phone call from the Department of Health out of nowhere, I am going to freak out a tiny bit. I will. Why are they calling me? Am I in trouble? It's the first thing that comes to my mind. And that has to do with trauma, with a bunch of other things that are, that none of us are trying to trigger, but they happen, right? So having language access, talking to people in a way they can actually understand, being humble, like you said, and referring to someone else when that is appropriate. All of these are some of the strategies that we can implement. And also, Shay spoke a little bit about the way that she talks to patients, right? And how she, in that moment, actually explains, right? Hey, if you get out of care, that we really care so much about you that we're going to make sure someone is going to call you and we're going to track you down to help you get back on care, because that's what will help you in the long run. So these conversations have to be happening in every level. They have to be happening at church. They have to be happening at when you're watching Hulu and then the little commercial comes up. All of these are quick and really important interventions, being in the web, right, where people are at, in person, where people are at. All of these are the many ways that we can address some of these equity issues, but also speak in a way that people can actually understand and internalize the information.
I would also say that one of the biggest things is we have to address the fact that most of the people that enter the Ryan White system of care, if not all, they're lower. They have a lower income than most. You know, they have to be 400% below the poverty line. Exactly. So one of the things that I respect about Divas in Dialogue is actually the fact that like Mulan has been very intentional about including like we're going to prepare them for job interviews. We're going to have all of these different components. And I'm not saying that Ryan White has to start like teaching people how to get a job, but like when we start to think about the programs that we're building out for people living with HIV, especially the ones that are in the Ryan White system of care or that are accessing care through the health department, are these programs giving a value add to the person living with HIV? Because I gotta be real with you. If you tell me like the benefit of going through this educational program is that you're gonna know all about HIV, it's like, oh, well, I'm already living with it, like, thanks, you know? But if I tell you like, you know, you're gonna learn how to get some job skills out of it, we're gonna give you a certification as a peer, we're gonna give you something that's gonna be of value to you that can help you get better in life in a different area of your life. That's the thing that we have to start asking. Because yes, the incentives are fun. It's great to be able to get gift cards and all those things. Those things are working now, but we have to start thinking about like what's the next step as a system of care. And it's definitely that value add for consumers.
I think what you're referring to is overall empowerment of the person. So it's not just you giving that person a handout today and you keep you in the system. No, it's empowering you to go to the next level to become a greater you. So whatever that may look like, becoming a peer, becoming a case manager, or just being an advocate in your community to educate your neighbor about, hey, do you know you're supposed to get tested every year? I didn't know I was supposed to get every stuff like that are things that we're supposed to do. So you're providing that empowerment to the whole person, not just focusing on one key aspect of them as a person, but you looking at everything as a whole. And I like what you talked about, Felipe, addressing all of those other bars before you get to the bar of being diagnosed with HIV, because we have to really, really be aware that those things exist. And those things actually have an effect on how you perceive care, how you're going to stay in care, how you're going to become retained, how you're going to become virally suppressed. And if we don't address those issues, those bars before the bars, we're going to be continuously talking about how we're going to end this epidemic. So it got to be a whole empowerment piece where we are addressing racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia. All of those things have to be addressed if we're going to really talk about ending the epidemic. And it's overall empowerment of each person. And if I don't see anything else on here, I just want to let everyone know that you matter, that it's all about you as a person to know that you are important. And before we can do anything about ending the epidemic, you have to have a value of yourself. So I think that's what I really wanted to get across today. And I just want to thank everybody for even giving their input on how we can all partner, collaborate, and get together. But we have to make sure that this is intentional for the people that we're trying to serve.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want to, I would like to add something based on what Andres mentioned earlier about the system of care. I believe we all understand that we are on the right way. We are going on the right direction to end the HIV epidemic. But I believe we need to continue monitoring closely the system to find out about the small gaps that are in there and filling them out as quick as we can, because it's a puzzle. Until we make it work, you will not be able to end the HIV epidemic. And the same way we mentioned immigration status, some people will stay out of care. They don't even want to get tested because of their status. We need to bring that information out there, let them know we don't check your immigration status. So when people they have knowledge, they are empowered, they can make decisions. So that's what we're trying to do, bring them the piece of knowledge so that they can, when they know, they will make better choice, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Well, I would just say that that we should be striving for people to actually thrive. And that is the ultimate goal, right? A lot of our folks are barely surviving. right? Making ends meet barely, struggling every day. You began, I think, the conversation talking a little bit about like, well, how can people even be on medicine if they are they don't have stable housing, or they don't have a transportation, they don't have a job, right? Addressing what makes a person whole, what makes them wake up in the morning and feel like, you know what, I want to live. That should be what we are trying to do in this ecosystem that we're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your input. I want to reiterate that, the goal of programs like Ryan White are obviously to, and Claudia could speak to this, to provide that self-sufficiency. But, we've talked a lot today about some innovative strategies, some approaches, and some considerations that are specific to ending the epidemic that can really take us to that next level and achieve empowerment, achieve that mindfulness, the willingness to thrive. So again, I want to thank our panelists very much for sharing with us, and I hope these conversations continue. We'll obviously provide some more opportunities for that to our community. We want to invite you all to ask questions, to submit comments, to reach out to some of our panelists here and let us know what ideas that you have so that we can continue these conversations and make sure that we're implementing the most effective strategies to end the epidemic in Orange County. Thank you all so much, and we will wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.